Wes, and today we're taking a look at the new Zhiyun Cinepeer C100 tube light. Bar light, light wand, light bar. Really need to settle on a name for that. This one breaks all the molds, breaks all the rules, so let's get into it, starting with the build quality. You will notice that this light bar is not a lot like other light bars. Most other light bars are thinner, maybe rounder. Even this one is a little less round than usual. And this is hefty. There's no IP rating for this that I'm aware of, and I mean, I can see the fans pretty clearly through this structure. We're already losing a point there. A lot of light bars these days are coming out weather sealed, and that's great. As you can see, the front diffuser is easily removable, just slides and pops off. Underneath, we can see all our fancy LEDs. They're a little bit offset because we have these voltage controllers here, power controllers. And we can see our RGB LEDs in the middle, our CCT LEDs on the outside. Very exposed. This is a plastic protector here. And we're going to talk a lot more about this diffuser later on in the video, unfortunately. Snap that back on. So our front section here, our diffuser, plastic. This section here is plastic. It's got this soft touch finish that I feel like when they designed it, they thought was going to be kind of a premium finish, but it comes off actually feeling kind of cheapy. And these flush mount buttons are a little difficult to use without being able to see the light. A lot of the time you have a light on a light stand, you like to just reach behind and press the button. A little harder this way. Knobs on the side, they feel just fine. When we get around to the battery compartment here, tough metal construction. We have this metal bar here that protects the cooling fins on both sides. What's our screen made out of? It is plastic. That scratched very easily. And the screen is very small. Normally I'd like to take apart a light to more closely investigate how the chassis is held together, but there is no obvious way of getting into this without breaking it. I'm not entirely sure how they assembled this. All that being said, I can say, for reasons that we'll talk about later in this video, I have dropped this from 6 feet up twice now, and it is perfectly fine. So I have to say it has been quite durable, and I'm going to give this a build quality of 8.5 out of 10. Moving on to feature set, the headline feature of this is we have 100 watts of LED output, which is wild for a light bar. Especially a light bar this small. They have a previous light bar, the F100, that boasted 100 watts, but that was in a boost mode. It wasn't really designed to do that, got really loud. Also, the uniformity of the RGB spectrum, the actual lux output was not great on that. This one, much more compact, and we have 100 watts and it's designed to run at 100 watts. Tons of battery power, tons of cooling. It is made to do that and will do it just great. This can be powered by the included DC power supply or by USB-C. I was a little bit worried because on the website and on the package, it talks about like 25 or 30 watt USB-C charging. I was like, oh, is this gonna run down while it's running on USB-C? But no, when it's operational, this will pull 100 watts over USB-C, so fully power supported. But when it's charging, it charges a little bit slower than that, which is totally fine because, you know, you don't wanna charge your batteries too fast. Although it's nice to have the option to do so. Here's the included power adapter. We can see that this is rated for 120 watts. Lots of juice. If you get the full kit, you also have this U-shaped barn door assembly. So this one opts for a reflective type, and I can understand why they did that, because this is all about output power. Oh, it's a big rig. Here we go. Oh, my diffuser started to come off. I don't like that. There, pop that back on. So the other option for barn doors is to have something with a light absorbent pattern, like on this small rig bar. These ones go on much more easily. Snap, snap. But they're more for focusing the light, and they don't amplify the light as this one does. When you put these barn doors on, you end up just with a larger light source, essentially. The light source goes from being this big to being this big, which is great for a lot of purposes. I'm gonna pop this back off again. Here we go. This has Bluetooth app control with the ZY Vega app. Relatively simple app. It's kind of in the middle when it comes to features and breadth of capabilities, not nearly as much as the Sidus Link. And honestly, you're going to want to control it that way because you have just a tiny little screen on here. Not a ton of fun. This is a pixel effect light, so your light effects can travel up and down. To turn it on, we do press and hold, single press, then long press. There we go. Booting. Woo! That is bright. Let's switch to our effects mode here. See, as you can see, the effects travel up and down the light. I'm going to turn that down so we can actually see that on camera. A little better. Is that exposing? We're down to 5% power now. At the end of the segment, we're going to go through the effects and see how effective they are. There is no DMX control on this. One feature, it's nice that the light bar goes right to the end of the light. Some bar lights, you'll have a gap there, and so you can use multiple lights and create a perfectly seamless design. We have a 1/4-20 on both ends, that's nice. And if you get the full kit, there is also this 1/4-20 clamp that comes with it. This is my Godox elbow though. I do not recommend using this 1/4-20 clamp. Goes on, ratchets on like that, snap. That's great, it holds on very well. However, this little arm here, it is very easy to release it. And 3 times now, during a photo shoot, I have had this pop off unexpectedly. One time, I was just moving my light stand and this caught on like a twig on a branch, popped off, dropped to the ground. Another time, as I was walking past it, I just brushed it with my shoulder, popped off, landed on the ground. In the studio, again, just walking past it, my sleeve caught on this little thing, popped off, fell to the floor. This is not a safe device. There needs to be a safety or something because it comes off way too easily. Sorry guys. And so, for the most part, I would rather just use the 1/4-20s. Let's look at the viewing angles on the screen. They are very good. However, the screen is slightly recessed, and as soon as you get it up on a light stand or something, it's very hard to see. You want to use the app. And one thing that we're missing that is a feature as well is weather sealing. All right, let's go take a look at the effects. All right, first of all, big seizure warning for the effects section. Any issues there, please look away or skip ahead to the time code shown on the screen. First, some bad news. The effects are not accessible through the app, which I had mentioned before. You'd best be using this through the app because the screen is so small. Unfortunately, the effects have to be done by hand. In the app, you're only controlling the CCT and HSI functions of this light, so that's a big shame. First, we see the SOS effect. No surprises there. TV effect started out a little weird, but then it started to make a little bit more sense. With almost all of these effects, you can change the white balance, which is good to see. You can't do that on all lights. Candle effect, a little bit too slow to begin with. And you can change the white balance. Boy, do I hate it when the candle effect is only at 5600K. Makes no sense at all. So candle effect could have been a little more flickery. If you see any banding in the background, that's just from the fairy lights. That's not from this light. This light does not experience any banding. Paparazzi, I find, is a little bit too predictable. And some of those fast flashes are kind of excessive. Police car by default is bizarrely fast. I have never seen a police car blink that fast in my life. Yeah, I don't much care for this police car effect. It does not show up well on film because it is so fast, and even to the naked eye, it's very weird. Firework becomes very dim for some reason. You gotta really crank this up. But the effect itself, it makes sense. It's got the build, the pop, and so forth. Into the disco. It's blinking lights. Hue flash, I'm not sure why I would use this one, but you choose a color and it blinks. Hue pulse, we're gaining up and down, in and out. hue loop. We're rotating between different hues at a selectable speed here. The rest of these are pretty self-explanatory. Alright, and now we're moving on to the pixel effects. Okay, well, this has something that a lot of things don't. 100 watts of output, tiny package, that's phenomenal. That's a huge feature, but we don't have the most effects or the most configurable effects. Also in the full kit is an egg crate. Well, it doesn't look much like eggs, and a diffuser. So you can use this however you want. I normally wouldn't use that. If I'm gonna get into all that, I'm gonna be using more conventional light myself. So overall for feature set, we're looking at an 8 out of 10. Probably be a 9 if we could get those effects controlled through the app. This thing does almost everything, and it packs a punch. Light quality. Let's bring up some graphs and charts and numbers here. For light quality, I was surprised, and unfortunately, not in a good way. But, that being said, let's go have a look at what you can do with this. This light is so bright that I was able to do some day for night shooting with it. Not 100% effective, like not completely dominating the scene, but it worked. Worked totally fine, allowed to set a mood in broad daylight. Well, it was a little overcast, but still, it worked great for that. We have to talk about the quality of these LEDs, and they're not fantastic, unfortunately. And one of our big issues is this diffusion panel is creating some problems for the quality of light coming out of this. The white balance is obviously calibrated with this on, so our rating is going to be reflective of how it reacts with this on, but we're going to talk about both sides. So with the diffusion panel on, we're seeing a CRI at 5600K of 94.1, not competitive these days. An R9 of 72. R9 is much better at 2700K. That red light actually gets out. And our Kelvin shift, fantastic. Very stable Kelvin. Our CCT accuracy, very good. However, it doesn't get all the way down to 6500K. It only goes to 6351. Very close to 2700, very close to 5600. but that gives us a light score of 63.3, which is very low. But if we take this diffuser off, all of a sudden we have a CRI of 96.4, which is perfectly respectable, an R9 of 88, which is kind of passable. Now our CCT accuracy is just wrong. It's off by 330 to 380 because, again, it was calibrated with this on. But that gives us a total light score of 75% when we take that off. So we have some issues with this diffuser. If you want good skin tones at the daylight color balance, you kind of have to take it off. And if we go step over and look at our RGB, the story is a little bit better, but we have the same difficulty. With the diffuser on, our light quality is worse, mainly because this is affecting our saturation. It's pushing those colors around in a way that it shouldn't. Pretty good Rec 2020 color space coverage with the diffuser on. Our color accuracy is not class leading, but not bad. Where this excels is in our color output consistency, so lux versus color, which is ironic because the last 100 watts Zhiyun light bar that we had was very bad for that, the F100. This one, however, we get a 21.7 average deviation across our color spectrum. That's the best. That's the best average deviation that we have had of any RGB light. Amazing. Now, we are getting much lower blue lux than we are getting in like the greens and the yellows. And just a note about that, it's not that the manufacturers are like skimping on blue, it's that the lux spectrum is skewed against blue because it mimics the human eye. Our eyes are most sensitive to green and least sensitive to blue. So, to produce an even lux, a light has to pump out an enormous amount of blue light and a significantly lower amount of green light. Even though blue LEDs are more efficient than green LEDs, and that gives them a leg up there, in order to have an even perceived brightness, they've got to pump out extra power through the blue LEDs. Some will just do an even line, and then that results in very dim blue. This one does a little bit better. The blues aren't quite as dark as on a lot of lights by comparison. For our RGB rating, we're looking at a 78.8%, and that gives us an average score 63.3 for the CCT, 78.8 for RGB. That's a 71% or a 7.1 for light quality. Not class leading. Usability. I had mentioned before, the app, easy enough to use.
We unfortunately do lose a half a point because we can't control the effects from the app, just the CCT and RGB.
The tiny screen, not easy enough to use. Thankfully, we have two knobs though. They didn't try to combine those, and they're clickable for quick shortcutting, jumping around. These flush buttons, not fantastic. Barn door attachment is kind of gigantic, but it does provide you with a very nice wide light. This thing is heavy, it is thick, it is not a tube, it is a chunky beast. Obviously that's giving us some power, but it makes it less convenient to use. This is a weapon. The included mounting clamp, not fantastic. This will accept 100 watts over USB-C, which most devices these days still don't, or you can use the included power adapter, but you have to pay extra for that bundle. I think it's $30 more for the power adapter. You don't really need it though if you have some good USB-C charging at home, so that's totally fine. Also, I keep having problems with this diffuser. I bump it against things, I take the barn doors off and on, and the diffuser falls off. I'm a little confused as to why, because like when I do it with my hands and snap it on, it doesn't feel like it should come off that easily, but I think just because of the way that it sits flush with the end, if I push it this way, boom, it pops right off. I feel like there needs to be a lock, unfortunately. Ultimately, we are getting a good score because of its wildly compact power. 100 watts in this tiny footprint.
There just aren't very many battery-powered LED lights that you can just use outside like this and be truly effective. It's not going to overpower the sun, but it is going to add light, and it is so much more versatile than a light that only has 20 or 15 watts of power. So for usability, we're going to give this a 7.5 out of 10.
Value. This one is difficult because what do you compare this to? It's really in a class of all its own. Closest thing, obviously, as I said before, is the 5-ray F100. That's $250. This one is $300 for just the light, $400 for the total kit, or $330 for the light and the power supply. Complicated. Closest thing from another manufacturer would be the Godox LC1000. It's a CCT only light, no RGB, but it boosts up to 100 watts and it's $220. Doesn't really come close, and it's got a big handle on the end. This is a better form factor for a light bar. The handles, they're nice for holding on to, but when you're really setting up a shot, you don't want that extra stuff. You want it to be compact. All the other light bars, I could talk about them, but most of them are 16 to 25 watts of power. They're just not comparable. So for value, I'm gonna give this an 8.5 out of 10.
That gives us a total score of 79.2%. Had it not been for that lack of Bluetooth app control over the effects on this, it would have been 82.2%, so we'd love to see that in a future firmware update somehow.
This is a solid light, but I feel like it's a niche light. It's expensive and it's wildly powerful. Most people don't need this much power, but if you want a light bar that you can use in multiple scenarios, that has lots of battery life, tons of power, highly versatile, this is the light for you. Is it perfect? No. No, it is not. Let me know down in the comments below how you think that we could fix this, make this better, or maybe I'm just complaining too much, and I'll get back to you. If you want to pick one up, there's going to be a link down in the description to help support this channel and feed my fat cats. But until next time, it boots up a little bit slowly, keep it colorful, and go take some photos.